Hello, everyone. Bible believers around the world. So this is part one in a brand new Bible study mini-series. And this series is going to be addressing some claims that a commenter made on my most recent Bible study lesson. That being the lesson that I did talking about how the seed goes through the father. And that if you don't have an Israelite mother, but have an Israelite father, you're still an Israelite. Now, this guy made three claims. The first claim he made is that the word bastard in the scriptures refers to somebody who has an Israelite dad but does not have an Israelite mom. So basically his theory, his doctrine that he's pushing is that anybody who is of mixed ancestry is a bastard. All right, that's his first claim. His second claim is that Jubilees chapter 30 bans intermarriage with the sons and daughters of Japhet, who we now call white people, Caucasians, Europeans, etc. Now, his final claim is about polluted lineage, or as I call it, dirty blood. Now, all of this is false doctrine, devil doctrine to be more specific, and we're going to be clearing all these claims up in this new Bible study series. Starting off with the latter, we're going to be learning in this series when the scripture talks about polluted lineage, it's not saying that certain ethnicities of people have inferior blood and that intermarrying with them literally gives you dirt in your blood and they literally pollute your lineage like they give you a disease, like they're dirty. Because the scriptures, for one thing, says, from one blood, the Most High Yah made all nations. So there's one blood that all nations are made of. So with that scripture right there, it already puts a hole in the doctrine that some people have inferior blood or they have dirty blood and that they pollute your lineage. We're going to learn about what that polluted lineage is really talking about. And it's not about so-called race. Number two, we're also going to dive into Jubilees chapter 30 once again. We've already gone into Jubilees chapter 30 before, but we're going to go back and show how Jubilees chapter 30 has nothing to do with the sons and daughters of Japhet, and it's not proof that interracial marriage is a sin, because it's not. And number one, in this episode, we're going to be covering the true meaning of the word bastard, and we're going to be learning that the Greek and Hebrew meaning of this word has been hijacked in the past decades by white Japhetic supremacists to make it support Jim Crow doctrine, and that during the time of Moses and Abraham, the Hebrew word for bastard did not always refer to somebody of mixed ancestry. It was not mongrel. It was not a word for somebody of mixed ancestry. We're going to prove that. Now, let's begin. The word bastard doesn't mean mixed ancestry. There's an old 1900s teaching that the word bastard in the scriptures refers to someone who is of mixed ancestry. And they use this to say that children who are the descendants of Israelite fathers with non-Israelite mothers aren't Israelites, but are bastard seed. However, this doctrine is incorrect and carries many flaws. The Hebrew word mamzer, which was translated to bastard in the King James Bible, refers to a child born from a forbidden sexual union under biblical law, such as incest or adultery, not specifically someone of mixed ancestry. Bastard in the Greek, Strong's G 3541, refers to a spurious or illegitimate son. So once again, the word is not tied to the genetic makeup of the person in question. If being the child of a mixed ethnic couple meant bastard, that would mean that King David would be unable to come into the congregation of Israel, because his grandfather Obed was born from an Israelite and Moabite union. This also holds true for Manasseh and Ephraim, because their mother was an Egyptian. Even King Rehoboam's mother was an Ammonitess, not an Israelite. So not only does the Greek and the Hebrew breakdown of these words paint a different story, but so does the history. Because if this doctrine were true, all of these guys would be going against Torah. During the era of American slavery and the scramble for Africa, theologians needed a way to prove that God hates race mixing to justify Jim Crow and segregation. They began to claim that the word mamzer came from a root meaning to be mixed or spotted. They ignored 2,000 years of Hebrew scholarship to invent a new definition, a mongrel. Dictionaries and concordances, which the clique uses as their final authority, began to bake this 19th century racism into their definitions. James Strong published this in 1890. Under mamzer, it says a mongrel, born of a Jewish father and heathen mother. Strong was a man of his time, the 1890s. He added that heathen mother part to reflect the racial politics of the Jim Crow era. There is no Hebrew text in the Bible that supports his addition. If having a non-Israelite mother meant you weren't Israelite or meant that you are unclean, all of these important people of Israel wouldn't have women of other nations in their family. Before we continue showing the devil doctrines that have been created with the word bastard, I want to shine a light on another thing that the dude said. And what he said was, once you marry a daughter of Japhet, you will never be able to have a 100% black child again. Now, here's the question, folks, ladies and gentlemen, everybody, all around the world who's watching this right now. What makes an Israelite an Israelite? Is it black or is it the seed of Jacob? Because look at this screen right here. The Hebrew Edomites, Esau, our twin brother. He was black, and his descendants are black. Ishmael, look to the right. He was a black man. His descendants are black. The Moabites, look at that afro. They're black. The Canaanites, we saw in another lesson. They're blacker than black. The Egyptians, they're black. So we are not alone here in being black. We are not alone in having our hair texture. We are not alone in having flat noses. We are not alone in having full lips. And we are not alone in having the skull shape, and we are not alone in having body mass. So the question is, I'm going to ask it again. What makes an Israelite an Israelite? Is it blackness or is it the seed of Jacob? Because brothers and sisters, here's the thing that we need to understand. If an Israelite dude marries a Korean woman, that woman will not get rid of Jacob's seed. His haplogroup, his Y DNA haplogroup, his paternal lineage will still be carried by all the children. The Israelite E1B1A. Will the children look like LeBron James? Maybe. In some cases they can. Maybe they won't. But the Jacob seed continues. The seed passes on. The color and the features, which are not only our features anyway, might not stay. Okay? But that does not make you not an Israelite. And that's not what being an Israelite is all about. We need to get out of this blackness stuff, okay? Because everybody in the region of the Israelites was black. And many of them, Psalms 83, everybody in Psalms 83 was a black man. But they weren't us, and they wanted to get rid of us. Okay? So we need to get rid of focusing on black and focus on seed. And talking about the Most High Yah, Yahuwah. Yahuwah cares about covenant, not race. And we're going to talk about that in a later episode about what polluted lineage really means. Because I'm going to say it right now. If Yahuwah cared about the racial appearance of the Israelites, he would not have allowed so many women of different nations to be the mother of significant people who he used. 2 of the 12 tribes of Israel, Ephraim and Manasseh, their mom was a Hamite. Historically, Hamites are darker than us. Most Shemites are medium brown. Hamites are dark brown. So intermarrying with Hamites would make us even darker. We would go from that caramel Shemite color to a dark Hershey Hamitic complexion. So Ephraim and Manasseh would be darker because of their Egyptian mother. Okay, because Hamites are darker than us Shemites. We're medium brown. Some of us get really dark. But on the regular, Hamites are darker than us. So, if Yahuwah cared about the racial view or the racial appearance of the Israelites, he would not have allowed that to happen. We already talked about king of the king. What was it? I forgot how to pronounce his name already. But his mother was Ammonite. Obviously, Ammon is related to us, so they would have looked very similar to us, but they're still not Israel. So if the Most High Yah cared about racial purity, he would not have allowed that to happen. A king of Israel did not have an Israelite mom. King David's grandmother was a Moabite. Okay, now we're going to be looking at some evidence of the theologian switch of the word mamzer and how over the years, these theologians and translators started pushing the word mamzer to mean race or mixed or so-called biracial. So we're going to be starting in Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 6. That's what we're going to be looking at, Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 6. Now, Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 6 is talking about that a specific group of people will dwell in Ashdod, and the pride of the Philistines will be cut off. Let's look at the 1587 Geneva Bible and what it says. It says, "And the stranger shall dwell in Ashdod, and I will cut off the pride of the Philistines." That's another way of spelling Philistines. So, in 1587, this is all the way back when the Moors were still in Europe, all right? In 1587, the word that the translators used in the 1587 Geneva Bible for Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 6 is that a stranger shall dwell in Ashdod. So somebody who's not native to the land, somebody who's not native, this is not their homeland. A stranger shall dwell in Ashdod. But what we're going to see is how as the years go by, this verse will become more and more racialized by different translators. Okay, so that's the 1587, stranger. Now we have the 1599 Geneva Bible. And as you can see, it still says stranger. But as you can see, the spelling on some of the words has changed. As we can see, Philistines is now spelled Philistines as we know it today, and not Philistines. But as you can see, it's still saying stranger, okay? It's still not racialized. Let's keep going. Then we get to the King James Bible. And look, the word stranger has now been translated to bastard. So in the past decades, we had it as stranger. A stranger shall dwell in Ashdod. But now we get to the King James Bible and it's saying bastard. But now let's get to even closer to modern day. And now this Bible, which came out in between 2016 and 2022, says a mixed race will occupy Ashdod. So between the 1587 and the 1599, we're saying a stranger, someone who's not indigenous, someone who's not native to the land, shall dwell in Ashdod. And then we get to the King James Bible, and it's saying bastard now. Fast forward to 2016, 2022, and now it's full on saying a mixed race. So how do we get from stranger to now it's been completely racialized? So now we're seeing the proof of how the translators have changed the meaning and have depicted this word differently over the coming years, over the past years. As the decades have gone by, different translators have slowly begun to racialize this word. Okay, here's some even more proof of the switch. So this is the Septuagint. This is the English translation of the Septuagint. Now, the Septuagint is older than all those other Bibles. And look what it says. "And aliens shall dwell," and you see, Ashdod is a completely different word, "and I will bring down the pride of the Philistines." So, all the way back to the Greek Bible, they were saying aliens. They weren't saying mixed race. They weren't saying biracial or any of that. So the oldest Bibles use the word aliens and stranger in the context of Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 6. But as you can see, we started to have that change by the time we got to King James, and now when we get to the modern Bibles of 2016 to 2022, it says mixed race. So the farther we go back, we see how Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 6 has been heavily racialized, when originally it wasn't. Now we're back in the Septuagint again, because we're going to bring this one home. So, remember what we talked about earlier in the lesson, how the word mamzer refers to somebody born of a forbidden union, not necessarily someone born of having a different mother who was not Israelite. Now, someone who was born with a non-Israelite mother can qualify as being a part of a forbidden union, but it's not about the ethnicity of it. It's about the fact that, you're marrying a pagan, or you're marrying, a witch, or you're marrying an atheist. So it's not a word that is about race, but it can be about race. For instance, Judah marrying a pagan, unconverted Canaanite and having children, that could consider children of a forbidden union because he married the daughter of a strange god. But Obed, the son of Ruth, a converted, righteous Moabite woman, not an Israelite, and an Israelite man, does not qualify as mamzer because it was not a forbidden union. So people who are so-called mixed race can be included in this, but it's not about specifically being mixed. Now, let's read what the Septuagint has to say, okay? Because it's going to bring this home. Because remember, mamzer, one born of a forbidden union. Let's read what the Septuagint has to say. Okay, we're in Deuteronomy chapter 23 and verse 2. This is the verse in the King James Bible where it says that a bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord even until his 10th generation. But let's see how the Septuagint translated this. One born of a harlot shall not enter into the assembly of the Lord. Okay, so it's saying one born of a harlot shall not enter into the assembly of the Lord. It's not saying one who is, so-called biracial can't enter the assembly of the Lord under any circumstances. All right. Now you'd be like, brother, you're reaching. Brother, you're theorizing. Brother, you can't prove that. I am, because I'm going to go to some other scriptures that prove this to be the case. Okay, we're going to be taking a look at a big nugget in Judges chapter 11, specifically the story of Jephthah. Okay, probably butchered his name. I apologize for that. Jephthah. Okay. So he was the son of Gilead, and his mom was a harlot, and his brothers threw him out of the house, saying that because he is the son of a strange woman. Now people be like, see, Gentile woman, you see, he can't be welcomed. But I want you to focus on the part where it says he was the son of a harlot, and then they threw him out. Let's read it. Now Jephthah, the Gileadite, was a mighty man of valor, and he was the son of a harlot. And Gilead begat Jephthah. And Gilead's wife bare him sons, and his wife's sons grew up, and thrust out Jephthah, and said unto him, Thou shalt not inherit in our father's house, for thou art the son of a strange woman. Okay, stop. Okay? Focus on the harlot part. Now, people are going to run with this and be like, see, this is proof that, y'all's not about race mixing. But we're about to expose that. And we're also about to point out some hypocrisy on how we know that this is not what his brothers were saying, because if they were saying that, they would be hypocrites about their own ancestry. Let's look. So we know that Jephthah was a Gileadite, and so were his brothers. So what tribe was Gilead from? Well, he was from the tribe of Manasseh. Why is this important? Because Manasseh's mom was not an Israelite. His mom was an Egyptian, a Hamite, someone from another nation. So if his brothers threw him out because he had a non-Israelite mom and not because his mom was specifically a harlot, then they would be hypocrites, because they themselves, according to this bastard doctrine, would be bastards, because the founder of their tribe, Manasseh, did not have an Israelite mom. It was an Israelite married to a woman of another nation. So clearly we know they didn't throw him out simply because the mom was not a blood Israelite, because if they did, they would need to be thrown out. And they would not be able to come to the congregation. So you see, we're tying it all together. Okay, we're going to pause right here because I have something to say. Now, I know people who teach false doctrine always love to move the goalposts. When holes in their ship start to be exposed and their devil doctrine ship is leaking and sinking, they start running to different parts of the ship, all right? They start moving the goalposts. So somebody might try and move the goalpost and say, oh, it's only Japhites. It's only Japhites who make you a bastard. It's only Japhites who make you unclean. Ham is okay. Moab and Ammon, they're Hebrews, so they're good. But there's nowhere in the scriptures that says that. There's nowhere in the scriptures where it says, specifically, oh, you can marry everybody else, but you can't marry Japheth. All right? Anyone who's in the covenant is legal to marry. All right? And if you don't believe that, and you don't believe in scripture, clearly, because Isaiah 56 lines that out pretty well, that they become a part of the house of Israel. All right. So when you say that a grafted in Gentile, someone who's keeping the covenant, you can't marry them, you're saying that you can't marry in the house. So if you're, in the house of Israel, you have to marry in the house within the house, because these covenant keeping Gentiles are in the house of Israel. But you're saying you can't marry them, so you have to marry in the house within the house, which is the blood Israelites that are in the house. But like I said, you're marrying within the house, it's within the house. All right. Now we're going to cover the Jubilees chapter 30 thing, which that is a huge flaw. It makes absolutely no sense, because the people who say that Jubilees chapter 30 puts a ban on Japhites, that you can't marry them, that makes no sense. Because the whole story in Jubilees chapter 30 is about Jacob's daughter being raped. And she was raped by a Hamitic nation. So why would the Israelites respond to their daughter and sister being raped by Africans and say, yeah, no more white people. Yeah, white people aren't allowed. That's like me getting robbed by a Japanese man and I ban all Chinese people from coming to my restaurant. It makes no sense. Once again, we're going to hit this point again. The bastard fallacy. The commentator claims that bastard seed is created when an Israelite marries a Gentile. The scriptural fact. In the Bible, a bastard, mamzer in Hebrew, specifically refers to a child born of incest or of an adulterous union, a woman cheating on her husband. It has zero to do with the race or nation of the mother, as we've already proven. Because if that was the case, then pretty much the vast majority of Israelite history is compromised. Because we've had successful, powerful men who did not have Israelite moms. We had a king who did not have an Israelite mom. We had a king who did not have an Israelite grandmother. We have a Messiah that has 2 interracial marriages in his lineage. So if you're all about, that, 1940s Jim Crow Nazi clean blood religion theory, whatever, devil doctrine is what it is, you're not following scripture. Okay, before we wrap this lesson up, I'm going to talk about Mr. Strong's. So in the Strong's Concordance, Mr. Strong's has the accurate definition of the word mamzer. That is being someone born from a forbidden union. All right. But underneath that, he adds an addition. We spoke about this addition already, where he adds Jewish father and heathen mother. All right. This is a bad translation that doesn't line up with scripture. Now, I know people are going to try and light me up in the comment section and say I'm a hypocrite because in past lessons, I've used the Strongest Concordance a lot, specifically in the Unmasking the Edomite series. But here's the thing. I don't need Mr. Strong's to show the truth that Esau is not the father of the Caucasoid peoples. Because when you look at the Paleo-Hebrew scrolls, these are ancient scrolls that existed thousands of years before Mr. Strong's is even thought of. The Paleo-Hebrew word that was written down to describe Esau's complexion is the same word that was written down to describe King David's complexion. So this is a case of not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because the Strongest Concordance gets Esau's description correct, but it does not get mamzer correct, because mamzer was an addition that does not line up with scripture. Esau, in his true complexion, Esau is a black man, and the Hebrew Edomites are black. They're not the father of white people. They're not white people. They're not the father of the Caucasians. That's devil doctrine. That goes all the way back to the Paleo-Hebrew Scrolls, not this mamzer thing. Because as we've seen, as we've gone back in time, the word mamzer was not referring to specifically someone who's mixed. It got racialized over time. All right. The Esau thing has not changed. It's always been that way, going back to the Paleo-Hebrew Scrolls. So you can't try and attack me for exposing an error that Mr. Strong's made and try and make it seem like I'm illegitimate because I've used the Strongs for other things. All right. It's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. All right.